I left the MAGA party, a lot of it has to do with the fact that I did not want to be a part of that cult. I realized, how many times am I going to sit here and say, well, that's not what Donald Trump means. Let me pull out my handy decoder. So how you been, man? Let's start with that. How you been? You been good?
I've been busy. I've been keeping myself busy with work, you know, filming. Now that I'm back here, I just got back from the Pokrovsk front in Donetsk region. So I've been busy filming that, going through that footage and figuring out what I'm going to do with that, writing articles, and just trying to, when it comes to like home life, just kind of rebuild a bit after the fire. So, you know, just keep it on, you know?
Been keeping safe over there in Ukraine and stuff, especially with this new administration. I'm sure it's been kind of crazy.
No.
I mean, at least it's a brutally honest answer, I guess, huh?
I mean, I do my best to like keep walking, you know, but it's a tough war. It's going to be a tough year, and with a lack of air defense systems, you know, even when like I came back from the most violent part of the front in Pokrovsk, you know, 5 failed evacuations, constant drone cover. You know, it's a city full of shallow graves, and you know, I come back and then I crash out on my buddy's couch in the countryside because I prefer to be in the countryside. It gives my head some peace of mind. And immediately, the largest drone attack on the Kiev region of the entire war begins. Over 237, I believe, on my count, if I remember correctly, drones lighting up the night sky with air defense systems. And so, like, I'm safer in the Kiev region, but you know, than I was on the Donetsk front line when I was in Pokrovsk City. But you know, it's going to be a tough year. Definitely, when there's going to be less air defense systems to knock those things out of the sky, and the Russians are preparing for what's going to be a large-scale summer offensive.
God bless it, man. That's crazy. And I've always said this about you, man. When it comes to like people on Twitch, YouTube, whatever it may be, you've been the one to always put your money where your mouth is, right? You're like, I'm gonna do this, and even if it doesn't matter how dangerous it is, you have a set of principles and you stick to it, man. So kudos to you, man.
Well, I mean, if it would be boring if I didn't do it, I guess. You know, if I like, I believe in all these things, I care about this deeply, and I will talk about it 2,000 miles away from where the issue is. Just seems there's enough people doing that.
So what's the general sentiment over there, man? I know I'm asking you more questions than you're asking me, but I'm curious, like, what's the general sentiment over there with the direction that the United States is heading? Because it seems to be kind of like over here, it feels like Donald Trump's been kind of siding more with Putin, and it seems like the EU is having to pick up a lot of the slack that America is forgoing.
I mean, you know, people aren't happy about the certain conditions. I mean, a lot of the morale on the front isn't even necessarily connected to, do we hold this village or do we hold that village of 100 people? Because most of what's falling, that's what we're talking about. That's not to diminish these homes that people have. It's just that's not what's going to. It's not going to be 100 square kilometers of territory that decides the fate of this war. When we're talking about the largest country on the planet fighting against the largest country within the entirety of continental Europe that's located within it. So I think, you know, kind of trying to weigh where the war is from those small territorial changes is kind of shallow. So I think Ukrainians have more tried to, I think the long game. And when you have allies kind of like, we're with you, we're not with you, we're kind of with you, we're a little bit more with you, now we're not with you again because we had an administration change. And oh, by the way, XYZ country is going to have elections in 3 months, and every single one is between center left to center right moderate versus Ukraine is full of a bunch of Kohol's McGee, right? Which seems to be what was up in Romania, which seems to be what was up in Germany with the AfD, which seems to be what was up in a lot of elections, which are nail biters. It's just here in the States, ours didn't go, I think, the best way. And, you know, I got to be honest, people before Trump got inaugurated here actually kind of were really open to giving him a shot. And I think people were frustrated by some of what they thought was like decision delay from the Biden administration. They were kind of burnt by the size of the aid packages, the time it took to give approvals for long range strikes, the fear of, escalation kind of dominating every conversation and delaying every decision. And that's not to say that none of this had any validity. I wasn't the one who was looking at the intelligence briefings about the Russians blowing up the world, and I didn't have that responsibility in my hands. But I think at this point, it's kind of hard to argue that, those early Polish, jet shipments would have ended the world, looking back in retrospect. But that risk was gone, the idea that, well, at least Trump's going to get up there, he's going to shake it up, and then he'll either find out that the Russians are not good at making, compromises, they're not good deal makers, they're not trustworthy negotiating partners, and then he's going to surge aid, which was his commitment on the campaign trail. Most people kind of didn't break down what his strategy was for where there was a strategy, but his strategy was, we're going to go down, we're going to sit down with party A, party B, we'll find some settlement. I'm sure it'll happen. I have a great relationship. It's the best relationships. Me and Zelensky and Putin are out there trading Bakugans and blades, and we're just, we're the best on the blacktop gang. And then we're going to find a deal. And if that fails, well, then we'll add pressure onto the party. For Ukraine, well, we now know what that pressure would have been. It would have been cutting off aid. It would have been cutting off intelligence support. It would have been restricting the re-exporting of American weapons that other countries have, because, we can say, hey, that has our technology. You can't give Ukraine that, which is an immensely powerful American diplomatic tool that we could use to really screw over Ukraine if we really intended to, which is something that people didn't really think too much about during the Biden administration. Then when it came to like the speed of F-16 shipments, the speed of tank shipments, but now people are thinking about a lot more. But Ukraine is not the party that's dragging its feet on the ceasefire demands. It was Russia who dragged its feet. And when it came to pressure on Russia, what Trump said he was going to do was massively increase sanctions, and the secondary sanctions suggestions from the start is how that would, I guess, develop, and massively increase aid shipments to Ukraine. Now, he never said if it would be aid or it would be weapons sales, and so there's some flexibility about how he could have implemented this to fit it within the MAGA agenda to make it look like, hey, we're not getting screwed, but he didn't do either. He didn't do either, even after giving key demands and even after making deals with the Russians that immediately went up and spoke, whether it be the civilian ceasefire, whether it be the energy ceasefire, whether it be ceasefires with the Russians themselves that they were going to implement and then themselves they violated, whether it be negotiations they said they were going to negotiate and do in Turkey, which then ended up being nothing but a farce, whether it be the ceasefires that Trump said he had to answer to, the 30-day request, which then he got nothing in response to, and he decided not to implement sanctions. There's so many different points where the Russians either screwed over a deal that they did make with Trump or continued to kick the can down the road on making a deal, even when given ultimatums by Trump. And so it just seems like a master class of like kick the can, which, I mean, we're not, it's not the 60s and we're not a bunch of kids on a blacktop. A lot of blacktop analogies today. I don't know why.
Yeah, no, I got you. I feel like that's the whole thing for me is I'm watching these like talks just really fall flat. And that's something that I've noticed. We were talking about why I left the MAGA movement, and that has a lot to do with it, right? Is a lot of empty promises, a lot of grandstanding, the bullying tactics that we've seen where Donald Trump brings in, these world leaders and then tries to embarrass them on the world stage.
Oh, I thought Trump called you a pussy on Twitter, and that was the final straw.
I got blocked by Dan Bongino, so I guess that's one thing, right?
Something.
But yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I kind of left the MAGA movement. I always told people, for me, the main reason why I left was a lot to do with January 6th. That's where it started to fracture. And then as we got closer and closer to the elections, things really started to kind of become apparent. Like, pick a side. And one thing I noticed was, by the help of people on Twitch, I did some deep thinking. There's many times where I've sat there and I've said, hey, I don't think this is completely the best thing for Trump to do. And I'd get bombasted by my own constituents, my own party members, right? Like, I have conservatives sitting there calling me socialist and Democrat and all that. I said, so I kind of looked in the mirror. I said, there's this cult ideology that comes with Trumpism. And I feel that it has gotten much more significantly stronger. And I think it has a lot to do with the sunken cost fallacy. You've seen a lot of reasonable people who were on the Trump train start to move away from Trump in recent years. And we're seeing this, I believe, on the world stage even. People who, those party candidates who supported Donald Trump and Donald Trump supported them are starting to lose their elections. And it's really quick, too, because we saw during the elections where numerous people, numerous incumbents were losing their elections because of the state of the economy and stuff. Now, all of a sudden, in certain runoffs, any association with Donald Trump has now led to them being ousted. But to why I left the MAGA party, a lot of it has to do with the fact that I did not want to be a part of that cult. I realized, how many times am I going to sit here and say, well, that's not what Donald Trump means. Let me pull out my handy decoder. I'm someone who loves facts. I'm someone who loves digging into things. And I can't tell you how that party that cared so much about facts no longer cares about facts. It's all about feelings. And I've seen them for what it is. And it's a giant grift. It's what it is. That entire side is full of money-hungry individuals that are not out to find the truth.
So I'm interested in going down, I think, two roads, where there's some roads where I think it's a bipartisan issue, where both the Democrats and the Republicans have this issue. For example, the grift. I'm going to be honest, there are grifting Democrats. There is such a thing as the grifting liberal influencer who constantly is going to post like merchandise under every single post, or take every single blue piece of, and no, I'm not going to criticize somebody for ever taking blue money, but take every single piece of blue money that can come by, to the point where it really seems like they're talking checks, they're not talking policy, definitely when it comes to the depth of their analysis. But putting aside the fact that there's going to be stuff like that with grifting, and we can get to the grift circle, I do want to get into what do you think is the main issue when continuing the Trump cult? Because the thing is, there's other politicians within the Republican Party that, is popular. Like Ron DeSantis is kind of popular. Greg Abbott's kind of popular. Like, these are big Republican names. But Ron DeSantis, when he tried to go to the national level and they tried to do that like Zoomer, edgy, like dubstep edit, I don't know how to really describe the vibe they were trying to go out with. But when they tried that and it failed and it flopped, it showed that this guy was, mortal. What has made it so that Trump's movement has stuck so solidly to him in comparison to other movements that have been a lot more mortal than Trump's, so to speak? What do you think are the biggest contributors to his people's loyalty? I know you said one was sunk cost fallacy.
Yeah, so sunken cost fallacy is pretty much where I think a lot of it really stems from. We started to see some of that loyalty play out during January 6th, where you had kind of, even in that event, you had those who were like, hey, I'm just here to like kind of see what's going on, and those who were inside the Capitol at that time. Those were typically those who were far and above more loyal to Donald Trump. And I think what we have seen is that Donald Trump's support actually start to dwindle. But what we're seeing is that those who are left with Donald Trump are the most loyal to Donald Trump. So it's kind of a darker answer to give, but I honestly don't believe that what is left of the MAGA movement is only but the most loyal people. I think those who are most reasonable conservatives, there are some conservatives who still support Donald Trump, but I think it's because of a deeper held belief and social anxiety, if you will. I know when I came out about being voting for Kamala Harris, I got questioned to no end. I went to a recent rally supporting our one of my local candidates. Shout out to Isaiah Martin
Hey,
and Houston.
Doghouse,
If you
could
are,
you
yeah,
keep with your answer? I just need to tell you, I need to use the bathroom. I'll be back. You can
okay.
finish your answer. I trust you with my channel for a moment, okay?
I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try to keep it okay.
Good
We're gonna
luck.
keep it PG. Okay. So yeah, guys, I think for me, what it comes down to is, okay, now that Dylan Burns is gone, guys, listen, Danabo, listen, man, I seen what you're typing out in chat. Okay, I'm not a grifter. Okay, no, I'm kidding, guys. No, but I think what you're seeing, honestly, is what is truly left of the MAGA movement is honestly those who are absolutely loyal to a T. So trying to get those people away is going to be extremely difficult, if not impossible. At this point, it does not matter. Whatever Donald Trump says goes. There are very far and few between any rational MAGA members, and this is why I've taken more of a cynical approach to really believing that those who are left are a lost cause. They have sat there and sunken in and spent almost 8 years, what will eventually be 12 years of buying into this ideology. For them to leave this ideology means social abandonment. So I don't believe that, it's going to be possible to really get any more substantial pullaways. And in fact, what you're seeing from polling to polling to polling to poll is you'll see an interesting number, and keep an eye out for it. I have yet to really pinpoint whether this is the case, but you'll see some radical positions that come up in polls where it'll say, do you support deporting U.S. citizens? And it'll be like 35 to 39%. You'll then see another poll come out. Do you support authoritarianism, right? Something along those lines. And you'll see another 35 to 39%. You'll consistently see that 30%. And it is my belief that that 30% is a symbolic of what is MAGA. That 30% is MAGA. 30% of the country right now is MAGA. And I do believe deep down that and I'll talk about this when Dylan Burns comes back. I think that, Danabo, you were saying, I need to know if you think they're stupid or lying. I think that they are a little bit of both. I have interacted with many of these individuals on TikTok. That's where my bread and butter has been lately, is TikTok. I've gone on TikTok lives. It's actually very refreshing. It reminds me a lot of the old Twitch politics days, honestly. You have a lot of normies that come in there, don't quite understand how politics works. Easy dunks, by the way. Kind of like the old hippy dippy days when you got some people who came in and didn't really know what they were talking about.
What a great philosophy. We can find some real novices, some real Joe Schmoes trying to figure out issues that we can ambush and hog tie and drag into the bush.
Listen, I'm gonna do a self little pat on my back here, okay? I'm like a little celebrity on TikTok over here because of the fact that I've been forged in the fire by Hippy Dippy and Twitch poll. Okay, I've been forged through the fire, so I have familiarity with some of these novices. But yeah, it's that's where I kind of get a gauge, honestly, is when I interact with some of these individuals that are on TikTok. You get a lot of elderly individuals who come in there, and this is something too that I think is a common theme amongst MAGA, is they are typically older. Trump did a decent-ish job capturing the younger group, but I think that with the elderly, it's still that holdout. So my hope is that as the youth tends to see that, their pockets aren't going to get any better, they're still kind of younger, so they don't really have a lot of maybe some of those responsibilities that they normally would have, or if they were older. I hope that they see some of these policies being terrible. But again, going back to what I was saying earlier, I think those who are left in the MAGA base are just, in essence, too far gone. I think they would, if Trump said, I'm running for a third term, they would go, what do you mean a joke? I never said it was a joke. I never said it was that. I think he should run for a third term. And they'll find every reason to believe them. And there's a funny thing, by the way. You ask any MAGA who they voted for, whether they voted for Mitt Romney or Donald Trump, or Mitt Romney or Donald Trump, Mitt Romney or Obama in 2012, they almost always say Obama. It's the funniest thing in the world. I do it on TikTok all the time. And every single time the conservatives go, oh, I voted for Obama. I'm like, no, you didn't. You were sitting there during that time complaining about Obama's tan suit. Spare me. And now you got Donald Trump putting gold all. Remember, I don't know, Dylan, if you remember this or not. They would complain about. I remember this specifically.
Actually, here's a question. Here's a question, Doc Allen. What's the last time you met a Mitt Romney voter? Somebody said, "Yeah, I voted Mitt Romney."
I'm looking right at him. But
okay, of course, but besides yourself, when's the last time you asked that question and got the answer Mitt Romney?
I had one person, and I've asked this question to quite a few people.
When was that?
It's been a little bit.
Yeah, I know.
That's what I'm saying. Like they're not very honest with it. Cause I'm like, I know you didn't vote for Obama. Like, don't even try. Now, granted, the problem is though too is like that election was, as I regretfully say, was almost 13 years ago. But you know, at that time, that was the first time I was ever able to vote, and I kind of did the thing where I was not politically involved. I was like, well, my parents are, you know, I grew up conservative because my parents would watch Fox News and everything. That was a much more simpler time, right? When people would complain about tan suit. My track record is not great. I'm embarrassed to have even, and one of the most memorable debates that I've had with you is the Muslim ban. Not one of my most proudest moments was the Muslim travel ban. Looking in hindsight, I'm like, what an idiot.
It's just so blatant, I guess, and that it was weird at the time because I knew you were somebody who would engage and you wouldn't just like pivot 100% away from something if it made you uncomfortable. You would discuss it, which made it kind of horrific to watch you kind of. When like I would play the video of him clearly saying I want to ban all the Muslims, like he's saying I want to ban them all until we figure out what's going on, and instead of pivoting away, you would try in some manner to engage with it. So it was basically just you running into traffic, getting ran over because you were like, okay, yeah, I'll run through traffic, but. So I could tell you were good faith, which is why I always appreciated talking to you about it, but it was still painful to watch.
I'll put it this way, and I'll reveal a little secret to everybody, okay? And this is the great thing about having been conservative and having debated in this manner. I can see when individuals do this. Generally speaking, you'll start from a 1,000-foot perspective, right? You'll start debating on facts, right? You might say, well, according to the CFRB, Donald Trump added more to the deficit. And you'll kind of walk down this rabbit hole. And when you get cornered, you run out of talking points. You're literally just clicking the metaphorical gun, right? You just click, 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 click. It's not going anywhere because you're out. You're out of ammo. So what do? You sit there and go, well, I mean, you know, listen, look at that little bit of context. You got to read between the lines. You see, there's a decoder ring with Donald Trump. You know, you got to understand he talks in hyperbole. You know, there's those default mechanisms you go to because it's just kind of that safe space, if you will, right? Because it's Donald Trump. And of course he's going to talk in hyperbole, right? He didn't mean 2 years. He meant 1 year. He didn't mean Muslims. He was just talking about those countries. You know what I'm saying? So you kind of,
one of my more favorite recent ones was like, oh, this was an off the cuff conversation was one I heard recently that was pretty bad. And I was just thinking, which conversation with Donald Trump is not like by default 50% off the cuff? If off the cuff conversation doesn't count, well, then nothing counts with him.
I mean, you're exactly right. And that's the problem I have when it comes to Donald Trump is that there's only so many times that you can sit there. And of course, the older he gets, the more that he's becoming cognitively impaired, that it's harder to really defend a lot of this stuff. Because now what's happening is I call it kind of like the horseshoe theory of sorts, where MAGA would sit there and complain about Joe Biden's cognitive abilities, and yet here you see Donald Trump in real time doing word salads, reading off of a teleprompter, you know, not releasing any of his cognitive results and trying to defend that. Everything that MAGA hated about Joe Biden and the leftists, they are now doing the exact same thing. They're no longer talking about facts, even though they did kind of talk about them, but not a whole lot. They've completely abandoned that. They've abandoned it. And now they're doing everything that they accused the left of doing. And it's insane to me to see that. Will I go back to being a Republican? I am, by the way, since you kind of made the joke about Nancy Pelosi's shirt. I will say this. Let me actually send you a photo. I went to a rally recently. I have gone to a rally.
Let me see the pussy hat. Let me see it.
It's not that. I look like a Fed, but I'll send it to you. Hold on. Let me get it pulled up real quick. I know I'll send it to you. Give me 1 second.
No worries, no worries.
I know I got it up here. You can probably show this. It's probably fine. You can see me in the background. Like, so I go to my first, like, political protest, and I'm like, okay, this is, you know, I'm walking around and everybody's wearing like a, you know, not down with the Fed. They'll say like, I don't know, no justice, no peace or something on their shirt, right?
Yeah.
And then you'll see like the little pickets, and then I'm walking around in that picture I just sent you. Did I send it to you? Yeah, I did.
Yeah, you did.
I'm walking around.
Continue.
There you go. I'm walking around in that. Okay. I'm feeling like, and then mind you, I'm there for this congressional candidate, and I can't help but feel the entire time that I either look like a Fed or I look like a bodyguard. And I'm like, this isn't working. I look very terribly out of place. And I think I have another bigger picture that kind of zooms out.
I think you really do kind of look like a Fed, but I mean, hey, that's good. You know, you need a few Feds out there in this day and age, a few in the crowd to grab the gun.
There's a more wider picture, and you can see the
You're kind
contrast.
of like a Fed scarecrow. You kind of have a deterrent effect.
Well, that's the thing. So it was funny because as I'm walking through the crowd, I'm already extremely nervous because I feel so out of place. I'm specifically looking for this one guy so a little bit of background. You can see the contrast there. It's really bad in that picture. It's like everybody right there's got the picket signs. They're wearing shorts and a t-shirt, and I'm over there wearing basically this, but with a black shirt. I look so out of place. And I, like Sepson said, I was waiting for somebody to sit there and just like, I was waiting for somebody to sit there and call me like MAGA or something.
I mean, to me, I would more wait for somebody to come up with like a phone, start recording like no justice, no peace or something.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I'm sitting there. I'm going, I am about to be called out in this crowd. But I was there for background. One of the great things about TikTok, and as well as Twitch and everything, I met this gentleman by the name of Isaiah Martin. He's running for Sheila Jackson Lee's old seat. And I just so happened to meet him on TikTok, and he's obviously near my town. And so I was like, hey, man, let's meet up. And that was the rally that we ended up meeting up at. Super awesome dude. He's actually really young. And I've been trying to support him every way I can, because that's another thing off of kind of the MAGA topic. When it comes to, running for Congress, I think it's important that we have new, fresh faces in the Democrat Party. I mean, we look at the budget bill that passed. I know you're probably going to talk about it today. Spoiler for anyone who hadn't already heard, it passed by a razor-thin margin. I think literally one person could have changed that entire outcome. And we had just happened to lose
Connolly. Senator Connolly from Virginia.
And we've lost how many Democrats due to just simply old age, or, I mean, obviously, I'm sure cancer played a part in it, but I'm just saying old age obviously doesn't help in that regard. We need new, younger people, and that's one of the reasons why I'm supporting Isaiah Martin. He is a great congressional candidate. It was really awesome, and you've been in politics, so you probably have the same experience. To see him kind of like be not attacked, but like confronted when he came down from the steps after giving a speech. People were like, "You're gonna vote for Social Security, are you?" and everything. And it was just super cool to see. So I'm hoping that one day he goes to Washington and be like, I was there, I support that guy. But we need younger candidates in the Democrat Party. I am now, into what I was getting at earlier, I am a full-fledged Democrat at this point. Everyone around me knows I'm a Democrat. I have embraced that. I am now, I guess you could say, a liberal, whether that is the byproduct of the Overton window shifting right or left. It's definitely shifting right, in my opinion. It's gone further right than it should. And now either I landed here as a liberal, or I consciously made that decision. It's probably a little bit of both, but yeah.
So I want to identify what were the big motivations for you to actually make the jump, because I've known you as a conservative, but someone who is like who believed in like a liberal constitution, a liberal framework for a while, but with those systems, or at least those ideas, vaguely, uh, you still voted for Donald Trump, and you didn't vote for him once, as far as I know. You voted for him twice, and so after voting for the man twice in two elections, after 8 years, what was it that finally pushed you over the edge and said, you know what, I'm not going to be with this anymore? Because he did have a cult at the start. You said it was the cult behavior and, the failed promises. What specifically was the tipping point, though?
A great question. So I think for me, what it comes down to is that I had to do some inner reflection. And what I found is that there was a lot that I was doing with Donald Trump that really was trying to reaffirm my biases. What I was trying to do was look for facts that reaffirmed my beliefs. Do I still do that to some degree? Sure, a little bit, right? But I try to find facts that would just agree with my position and not actually look at these facts objectively. And so as I started going through this transition, like I said, it's a fairly recent transition for all that's fair. It started really on January 6th as I saw, these people really defend this stuff. And I'm like, this is objectively like wrong. That's where it started to kind of crack. And then it really got bad when near the election. So when I got to near the election, I started looking at Donald Trump's track record. I started looking at what Joe Biden did, how Donald Trump, for example, increased the deficit substantially as compared to Joe Biden, how Kamala Harris's policies help the everyday person. I think for me, too, is, again, like you said, I probably have always held some of those liberal values, but I never really fully committed to going over to the left because I was worried about social exile. Going and telling your parents who have been conservative and have heard the word liberal meaning communist to them, it's kind of a scary leap to make. And so I quite literally, I won't even lie to you, when I told my parents, I'm like, hey, I'm doing TikTok, I had to have a conversation with them. As embarrassing as it is to admit that, I had to sit down and say, hey, look, you're going to hear some takes. You're going to see some takes. Understand this is why. And when I went to go see Isaiah, my dad actually, he was like, why are you going out there and supporting these people who support gang members? It was that kind of stuff that really, I guess you could say, opened my eyes.
Well, look, I just want to make switches affordable. I just want to make them cost affordable for the working man.
It's just, there's no facts that really support, objective facts that support Donald Trump, period. End of discussion. I mean, we saw, for example, them lie about not cutting Medicaid and SNAP. Well, quite literally, this, spoiler guys, the budget bill actually did that. It was literally that. Plain as day, black and white, they do that. It's every way you look at it, you can't put lipstick on a pig. I mean, it's still a pig at the end of the day, right? And so the same thing here. It's like you look at the deficit and how Donald Trump increased the deficit. You can look at the fact that the tax cuts led to part of that being the big part of the deficit. You can look at the fact that Donald Trump handed out money left and right. Why? Not because he wanted to sit there and help out the working class. No, because he wanted to try to get a optical win and say, look, I did that for you. I did that for you. And he wanted to get it. And we see the same thing play out with FEMA. That was a big eye opener too. When Hurricane Helene came by, he was the first one on the ground. He wanted to show that he cared about you during the election season. But then afterwards, when Kentucky was flooding, the Midwest was having tornadoes and everything else, where's Donald Trump? Oh, that's right. He's trying to get rid of FEMA and send it back down to the states who are begging for help. I think Holly was the one that was sitting there going up, asking for help with Kristi Noem. He's like, can you please help us a little bit? Kristi Noem's like, I'll try. Where? You know what I'm saying? It's like, how as a MAGA can you sit there and justify these? Eventually you have to come to grips with reality and say, I can't justify this anymore. And I think that's where I was. I was like, I can't keep defending these. The facts just don't line up. I would have to lie to myself, and I'd have to lie to everybody around me to continue to believe this stuff. Or I just go down the route that we went initially when we had our Muslim travel ban conversation. That's just Donald Trump being Donald Trump. He's being hyperbolic. What he really means, it's like, no. Donald Trump has shown what he means is what he means. Now, do I think that he's not in full control? I don't believe Donald Trump is in full control this time around. I think he was in slight control the first time around, but he had a lot of people kind of holding him back. And this is why I tell people, and I'm going on a rant here, so stop me at any point.
No worries.
I think what you're looking at with the first administration, I have respect for those that are, first term MAGAs, if you will, right? I get that. This second term, if you're trying to point to Donald Trump's first term, I'm gonna be like, that's not the same Donald Trump. That's not the same Donald Trump that we have now. The Donald Trump now has a band of loyalists, a band of Fox News hosts. I mean, the pipeline is clear. It's a grift. You want to be part of the Trump administration? Kiss his feet. That's it. And work at Fox News, and you got the pipeline right there.
I mean, when you talk about like first term Trump versus second term Trump, I remember talking to my fixer on the road in Ukraine. And before, like about half of Ukrainians wanted to give Trump like a shot. And my fixer was one of them. And he was just like, oh, everything's too slow. And, I'm kind of okay with rolling the dice. Maybe we'll, at least we'll have answers. We'll know how like quick or how, bad stuff's going to be. We put it all on red. We landed on black. But I mean, when you talk to these people about Donald Trump, about his reliability, about how much they trusted in him, they got burnt quick, and they quickly like dropped him. Like it was half of the country wanted to give him a chance, and now they're done. Right?
I find both the right and the left and the ideologies that occupy those sides moronic. Democracy and communism are false gods.
Okay. Well, no, somebody donated and gave me money, so I know it's strange. It's like I got possessed, but I'm still a streamer. Doghouse. Okay, I'm still a streamer.
Listen, I'll tell you guys while you're trying to listen to that. I changed my name because I started to take streaming more seriously. And I couldn't help but think, okay, in the future, if I were to ever go on Piers Morgan, do I want Piers Morgan to say this is the Doghouse Show? Not really. I was like, I have to have some kind of a moniker. I'm like, I got to have something there to work off of.
This is why I went Dylan Burns TV, because I thought, like, it's not like I'm ever going to be dropping my name. It'll be easy to remember. And the branding is in and of itself. It's not like, oh, I can't be called Tiggles McGee anymore because I sold that to, I sold that to MGM. So I got to rebrand as like Toot. No, I'm Dylan Burns. It's the easiest thing ever. So
right.
And, it's kind of silly. Some people giggle when they hear it the first time, but once you get over that, it's good. My name doesn't get confused with the video game. That's for sure.
I will say I got 10 more minutes, so just a heads up.
Sure. So can I get through these questions that I had? I had written down.
Go ahead.
So we talked a lot about selective responsibility, or basically, when Trump would claim credit for things that he really didn't have anything to do with. But I think recently it's gotten so aggressive. It's not only the claiming things they didn't have anything to do with. For example, claiming the economy and claiming the economy's motions while on the campaign trail. And then when the economy's motions go negative, once he gets inaugurated, oh no, that's just Biden holdover. Okay, so during the campaign, it was Trump when he wasn't president. When he became president, it was Biden. And then he said it was Trump again. And then it became Biden again once it became bad again. And then it's just the selective responsibility, which is so blatant to me that unless you're going out there to play defense for him, you have to admit that this is just a bad excuse for somebody who is increasing costs for consumers, who is increasing the average cost per household, who is going to end up passing taxes down to the consumer through tariffs, which is going to be one of the largest forms of tax increases for the consumer. And they don't want to really admit this. They don't really want to talk about this too much because a lot of this kind of revolts against traditional Republican doctrine, because they're making this big shift in the party and their trade policies. But I mean, like, it's just that the selective responsibility is so hard for people outside of the United States to see and watch people try to defend.
Yeah, no, you're 100% on the point. And what's happening right now is Donald Trump, and this is where facts matter. Okay. Objectively, there are certain actions that you can look at, any sane person can look at and go, Donald Trump is the sole person that enacted tariffs. Whose responsibility is that? Well, you just heard it in that. Donald Trump. Simple as that. Any consequence thereafter comes because of Donald Trump. Now, you can look at some of the more nuanced or gray areas. For example, you'll see chips manufacturers coming to the United States. In Donald Trump's own executive orders, it actually mentions how they are, quote unquote, revamping the CHIPS Act. Yes, you heard that right. The CHIPS Act that was enacted by Joe Biden. But you're not going to hear that. You're not going to hear them give credit to Joe Biden. They're just going to say that Donald Trump's tariff policy is the reason why these chips manufacturers are coming to the United States. That's not the case. And you'll see this sometimes. I've had arguments just today, actually, where I got into an argument with a Trumper, and I said, he's like, yeah, Joe Biden is to blame for all the inflation. I'm like, okay, well, the inflation came down under Joe Biden. Well, that's not because of him. That's because of the Fed. So you'll give
if Trump was president, if he won a second term, they would be saying, guys, inflation was global. It just would have been a shifting of the defensive position. That's all it would have been the change. Also, Roy, thank you for the £6. We'll be talking about Putin's new claims that he needs a buffer zone in Ukraine in the next segment. I want to get through the rest of these questions because you don't have a bunch of time left. Okay. So next I wanted to talk about echo chambers. Now, there is both such a thing as a left-wing and a right-wing echo chamber, but I wanted to ask you, as somebody who's now gone from right-wing, I don't know if you would say you were in an echo chamber, but from right-wing media spaces into left-wing media spaces, how bad is the echo chamber problem right now? And secondarily, is it any worse on the other side of the aisle?
Great question. I think there is a broad diversity of ideas on the left. One of the reasons why it's so attractive, but also one of the reasons why it's so destructive to the left. We saw this in the election with Kamala Harris when there was the pro-Palestine movement that was more on the fringes of the left. It wasn't something that was a more moderate position. So it's the downfall of the leftists, but it's also the strength of the left. This is one of the reasons why when there's a unifying movement on the left is extremely powerful. We saw this during 2020 with BLM, when we had the BLM protests and the fact that Donald Trump was in office. I don't believe that people uniquely voted for Joe Biden because Joe Biden had any unique, crazy qualities. Rather, he was not Donald Trump. To your point about whether or not there's an echo chamber on the right, 110%. I think it's gotten worse as, again, like I said, the more moderates have kind of fled from that position and are either now doing this thing where they're like, well, I don't support Donald Trump. I support, such and such independent person. The echo chambers are much louder and they tend to feed off each other. You can see this on TikTok. I go on TikTok and these right-wing spaces.
A lot more caps lock too, in my experience.
Yeah. No, they feed off of each other, and they're silly arguments. They're silly arguments. It could be like they'll sit there and go, "Yeah, I've heard it. I've heard it on TikTok." They'll go, "Oh, well, Donald Trump knows what he's doing." That's like, it's like, does he? Does he know what he's doing? Like and then they'll shift their position. They'll sit. It was about tariffs, and they're like, "Well, Donald Trump knows what he's doing, and like, we just have to have faith in Donald Trump." I'm like, I don't have faith in nobody but myself and my family.
Remember watching? I watched. It was one of the PBD podcast co-hosts. I forget what his name was. The one that's the crazier one. I think most people will know which one that is. But he was on one of the. I think he was on Piers Morgan, and there was some debate about Trump failing on ending the war. And basically, someone had suggested that Trump was being taken for a ride by Putin. And the way he reacted so indignantly, like, are you suggesting that he could be taken advantage of, that he could be, as if it was religious doctrine, as if the idea of, I mean, Biden could have been taken for a ride in a negotiation. Hillary could have. Obama could have. These are all people with much more foreign policy experience, much more diplomatic experience. Any politician could be taken for a ride diplomatically. Trump said that the Russians were interested in peace. We're over 150 days in. What other explanation is it? Have the Russians lost all their pens and they just can't sign the paper? Like, what other explanation could you have? And so you have to just appeal to this doctrine that there must be a wiser plan. There must be something we don't know. There must be. And so the type of benefit of the doubt that they would never give to their political opposition now becomes the lifeblood of their defensive doctrine for their faith, at least their faith in that man. So I want to go through a little bit more here because, again, you don't have much time.
Of course.
Deficit carelessness. How did that motivate you at all? Because I know you talked about the deficit. You pointed that out. You're a more traditional Republican. So I'd imagine that the deficit is an issue that concerns you of some amount. And now we just saw with this big, beautiful bill that they pushed through, which is what they've decided to actually call it. They pushed it through, and it's going to increase the deficit by trillions of dollars. What do you think about how the deficit has been treated by first term and now second term Trump?
Terrible. Plain and simple. Terrible. And the reason why is because, again, when it came to me and the deficit, it wasn't so much that I cared about the deficit. I think at this point, it feels like it's just numbers on a spreadsheet. Eventually, you're going to have to pay the Pied Piper. But definitively, you can look at Donald Trump and Republicans tend to spend a ton and leave Democrats to pick up the slack. The problem is that when they tend to implement these fiscal policies, it's at the tail end of their presidency. And so what you see is that those policies, terrible policies, carry over into the Democrats' candidates or presidency. And so what ends up happening is the Democrats have to try to fix it, and they tend to do that. They do tend to fix it. And I realized that after I was looking at it. And I had numerous people come up to me, and they're like, oh, but Doghouse or Vince, look, look at the deficit went up under, I think I had today. It was like, it went up $8 trillion. I'm like, well, think about this logically. Every single policy carries over and has impacts far reaching beyond when it was initially signed. We were under Donald Trump's 2017 tax cuts up until a couple of years ago because they have long-lasting implications. So again, just objectively, there is objective facts that Republicans raised the deficits time and time and time again. And what impact it had was minimal. It was more, again, just like I can't continue. The reason I voted for Kamala Harris was one, I thought she was actually going to do what she said she was going to do. Two, I felt that the facts were more on her side than it was on Donald Trump's.
Right now, it really feels like when choosing between the parties, it's really a question about deficit increase management rather than deficit, like slightly reducing the deficit, not anything about actually debt reduction or anything like that. I mean, there was, of course, the massive increase in spending at the start of the Biden administration, and then the working down to a below COVID deficit rate before then Trump gets into office, and now we're going to look at massive deficit spending in order to pay for these tax cuts that are being put in place. So I mean, really right now it doesn't seem like either party is really dedicated to significantly cutting the deficit, maybe better managing the deficit. It's just not a political winner of any sort right now, and the polling seems to indicate it as well. Nobody's really motivated by that, and I think that it's kind of seen as almost like exposed political capital, where the Democrats want to use, social spending in order to deal with the issues that they care about, and the Republicans want to be able to cut taxes wherever they want to cut taxes, gut regulation wherever they want to gut regulation. So it's really just a question of just like, hey, if I don't decrease taxes now, the Democrats are going to spend this on poor foreigners, or if I do not spend this on whatever social program I want to right now, Republicans are going to cut this tax for oil executives, right? So it's just, do you like not spend that political capital that could help keep you in power? There's this, in some extent, it's like a perverse political incentive as well that doesn't really necessarily benefit the country, because there's not a motivation to continue good fiscal management. Sorry for rambling about that a little bit. I only have two more major questions.
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
Next one is the grift circle. You talked about grift. You talked about graft. You talked about this being something that really angered you. Is it really as simple as the shoes annoyed you, that you looked at the watches and said, that looks cheap, I don't like that? Or are we talking crypto? Are we talking about any type of
All of it.
profiteering? What was it?
All of it, man. And let me tell you, it's like that. I feel like this time around was so much worse than the first time. When we look at the actual grift, it was so bad this time. Between the shoes, the watches, the guitars, like you said, Access tonight, they have a dinner because for all of their top donors to their crypto scheme, it's gotten bad. I feel like it's worse this time around than last time, and to me, I didn't want to partake in that at all. I feel like that's a pretty big deal to me.
I mean, I've had conversations with people where, like, we'll talk about like the more like showy versions of this type of grift, but when I talk about like more traditional corruption, like, hey, Donald Trump, if you spend this much money on contributing to a future political endeavor, you can have a one-on-one meeting with the president. Or if you spend this much money, you can have a group meeting with the president. And I'm like, is this bad? Is this not a good incentive to have these types of meetings? Not just period, but like in the Oval Office. And like, well, no, other politicians do. There's this defense for Trump, whose whole appeal was he's a slick shooting, off the cuff. He's not like the other politicians. He can look outside the box. But then anytime you come in and say, wow, it looks like he's just like another crook, the defense is, but other politicians do that all the time. I thought he wasn't another politician. Yeah. What the fuck is his appeal if he's just another empty suit from New York? There's plenty of those.
That's just it. They go, all politicians do it. What they don't realize is that Donald Trump has become more and more and more a part of the swamp. That's why I said every single thing.
It's just his own swamp. It's just, he just transferred in his own swamp.
100%. 100%. So
last question.
What was the last question you got?
Yeah, the last one is, have you been punished at all socially for your shifting political views? And if so, how much has it affected you actually?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So the field I work in is very much a industry that is dominated by MAGA. So it's difficult because I worry every day that one of my coworkers or somebody's going to see my TikToks, which that in and of itself is a concern. But the other issue I have is that socially, my parents have become accepting of it. But when you try to talk about, like I said, it's so we all are around the same kinds of people. So my parents were around majority of people who are, conservative. And so as I become someone who is less conservative or liberal, if you will, it makes it, more difficult for me to try to come out as a liberal.
Sorry, I can't hear you now. I think the audio went out. 1 second. I don't know if it's on my end or on your end. Let me check. If any other audio works. No. I think it's something on Discord's end. I have no clue. Try to say something.
There we go. I think I can hear you now. Say something.
Yeah, now I can hear you. I don't know what's going on.
Okay. It was my stuff. I have voice meter up, and for some reason it crashed. But sorry. As I was saying, I think the last thing I said or whatever was just that, in other words, I had to get over the fact that they understood liberal to be communist. And so it was like liberal is just center left, essentially, and all for all intents and purposes. I have become seemingly more further left as I get more frustrated with MAGA, but I'm certainly no progressive or socialist or anything like that yet. Still consider.
Have you
myself
lost
liberal
any
and
friends?
No, honestly, no, I haven't. But also, I've had to hide my liberalism. So
You're in the
I guess
closet.
I'm in the closet. I haven't come out yet, not yet, but working on it.
Okay, we all take our time to come out and have our pride.
Yeah, but I said I have been more supportive. I think that's the thing too, is like I've always tried to carefully navigate, certain issues, and I feel honestly now that I am on this side, it makes it easier to be able to kind of navigate these issues and not really have fear of pushback or repercussions. And I've opened myself up a little bit more to certain ideologies that I maybe wouldn't have had. So, for example, LGBTQ issues and things like that. Do I think that there's a whole lot that goes on there? Because I do think that one of the biggest things that the Democrats have to somehow navigate is trying to give ammunition to the right in terms of woke ideologies, right? I mean, they're going to use it regardless, but trying to navigate that in a careful manner to where you don't push too far left. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you push too far left, sometimes you'll end up probably pushing away some more of those moderate positions. This is the whole reason why I think. But on the same time, in the same breath, I would say that was one of the downfalls of Kamala Harris, was that Kamala Harris was too far moderate. I think she tried to appeal to the right so much so that she was probably considered, centrist or center right.
Well, I
kept telling.
Sometimes I feel like she could have gone to the offensive, like, oh, look at this trans gender surgery that they allowed in the prison system. You could be like, oh, that was Trump that did that. I'm sorry, Trump. If I was, not as woke as Trump, I was just trying to follow his example. I wouldn't have passed it in the law, but I mean, maybe, he put it in law, just stuff like that, to go on the offensive. Because I don't think the idea of like, I'm going to disavow there's no such thing as a trans kid. That's not real. If she was to do that, I feel like it would have the effect of people being like, oh, I guess that means the right wingers are right on this. Well, I'm not going to listen to the person who just changed their position at the last second. I'm not going to listen to the people who just said that they were wrong on this for 30 years. They were right. So I'm going to go over to their side on this issue, and I'm going to reward them politically for it. I remember there were some parties in Europe that decided that they just wanted to run super, super hard to the right on immigration in a way to try to outflank them and win the votes. And I feel that in some ways, they went so far, not to say that they didn't have any justification for any of the policy shifts, but they went so far as to indicate to the voters, like, oh, this is an immigration election. Well, who do I go for in the immigration election? Well, the people that everybody's running the chase after.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that's the thing, is that the next candidate that runs on the left is going to have an easier time because Donald Trump is deeply unpopular at this point. And I think that if they can stick to leftist issues, they'll unify the left in ways that we haven't seen before. I think the midterms are going to be a great litmus test. But I do have to get going. But what I will say, do you have any more questions you wanted to ask?
No, that was it. That was it.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, look, it's been a pleasure talking with you, man. And I appreciate you bringing me on. And I apologize for running a little bit short here, but I have been traveling for the past 3 out of 4 weeks. It has been insane. I have been trying to navigate streaming on the road. Turns out hotel Wi-Fi sucks.
Yep.
I'm learning that. So I'm going to try to get a hotspot.
Get one of those,
yeah.
honestly, I know I don't like them, but get one of those mini Starlinks.
I've heard of that. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm the nervous about it, 'cause I even contemplated, if I'm being very honest with you, okay, a little bit about getting a Tesla, and then my friend talked me off the ledge.
Well, yeah,
he was like, I would not.
The Tesla, you can get any type of electric car. There's not really another type of service that provides what a Starlink can right now when it comes to mobility and getting the internet literally everywhere. Now, I'm out in the countryside more. If you're just going from hotel to hotel, like you can take a swing and maybe get good hotel Wi-Fi every once in a while. But you know, it's not a question about whether liking them. It's about the question of the service.
Yeah. Well, listen, guys, I appreciate you bringing me on. If you want to find me, you can find me at the Vince Wilson Show. I'm on TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, you name it, I'm there. Dylan, man, it's been great catching up with you. If you ever want to talk again, just let me know. I'm a very busy man, and I'm probably going to be in the doghouse now, but it's okay. It's fitting for my name. But appreciate you bringing me on, guys. I look forward to talking with you again soon, Dylan, and please stay safe out in Ukraine, please.
I'll do my best. You have a good one.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
All right, you too, man. I didn't even know you were in Ukraine. I was like, oh, I mean, I figured you were, but I didn't think about it. I was like, that's why.
You thought maybe I had started going to Japan, or I'd
maybe
Taiwan, maybe
another front.